Scott Williams attended the JCEP Summit to do some networking.
I would hope to get the one or two connections that would be able to elevate my company to the next level with some consistent business.
This summit for Jacksonville's small and emerging business owners offers attendees a chance to meet prime contractors and other city agencies with an eye on working with them in the future. It's also a chance for everyone to hear about the work JEA is planning in the upcoming fiscal year.
Because we need you. I need you to be able to help us to serve the community, and we will be better as JEA and as an organization to make Northeast Florida better so that we can continue improving lives and building community along with you.
This year, attendees also learned about new programs the city hopes will help JCEBs succeed.
Yeah, what's new this year is we want to highlight education. Education has been one of those items that's been in demand for a long time. Our JCEBs want it, and so we're really putting a lot of focus on that this fiscal year.
JEA, meanwhile, wants to grow its diverse supplier directory.
We're encouraging small businesses that are located anywhere, of any size, and are certified by a third party to register to be a part of our supplier diversity directory. And you can find the directory at jea.gob2g.com.
Most JCEB business owners are just like the Wellingtons.
We create non-dairy, strictly non-dairy, artisanal ice pops, and they're made from fruits, vegetables, herbs, and spices.
They're looking for a chance to let their work speak for itself.
Okay, I've got 9 o'clock. We'll go ahead and call this meeting into order. Could I please have a motion to adopt the agenda?
Move to approve.
Second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion passed. Thank you. And also, could I have a motion to approve the minutes from our January 23rd meeting?
So moved.
A second. Before we move on, Joe, if you don't mind, that's my favorite program, one of my favorite programs at the JEA, the Small and Emerging Business Program. We make a huge impact to the community. So thank you, Ted, for highlighting that this morning.
The lady behind you is the one you need to thank.
Okay, good. Thank you. And let's go with the values moment, please, with Shannon.
All right. Good morning. I'm Shannon Tremaine, and I joined JEA just about 4.5 years ago in February of 2019. I'm a financial analyst in the debt services group, and you'll be hearing a lot from today. We manage JEA's current debt position, as well as planning for future funding needs to support JEA's mission of improving lives and building community. Today, I'll be talking about safety, which we define as we put the emotional and physical well-being of people first. But before I get to that, a safety briefing. For those of you attending in person, the safety briefing is on the screen and in your materials. For those of you attending virtually, please be aware of your surroundings. Today, I'd like to take the opportunity to focus on the emotional well-being aspect of mental health and safety, starting with some basic tips for improving and maintaining your mental health. First and foremost, sleep and rest are paramount to mental health and stress management. Starting and keeping a consistent sleep schedule and practicing good sleep hygiene are very important. The second is to find a way to get active. At least 15 minutes a day can improve mood and reduce stress. It doesn't have to be fancy, expensive, or structured. You can walk 7 minutes from your door and then turn around, or dance to music you enjoy while preparing a meal. However, if you take the second approach, please endeavor to not burn down your house. Make time to connect with friends and family. In person's always better, but a text message, phone call, or FaceTime will always help. However, social media is not a replacement for human interaction and can be very negative in large doses. So log off when you're not doing your best. Picking up a relaxing hobby, such as yoga, meditation, or a creative outlet or reading can also be beneficial. And you have to make the time for this because that's how adulthood works. You have the time you make. And if you need to ask for help, it's no shame to ask. Maybe you don't need professional help. Maybe you need help running errands or break from work or other stressors. But if you do need professional help, there's no shame in that. Helping you is their job. So some of you may know that this is Suicide Prevention Month. And in fact, this week is National Suicide Prevention Week. In 2020, it was the 12th leading cause of death for the United States, taking twice as many lives as homicide. The 988 Lifeline has a program called #BeTheOneTo, which focuses on how we can help someone who may be struggling. The first step is to ask clearly and non-judgmentally, are you considering suicide? And other questions to ask can include, how do you hurt and how can I help? Listen to them and focus on their reasons for staying alive, and do not promise to keep this a secret. The next thing you can do is to be there for them. Show up, don't make commitments you can't keep, and listen carefully and suggest other people who may be helpful or resources available to them. The next thing is to consider asking questions to determine if they have already harmed themselves or if they have an immediate plans or access to dangerous things. Depending on the answers, either call for emergency services or create a space free of harmful items. Help them get connected to ongoing support systems such as other friends, family, the 988 hotline, or other community resources, and consider if they may have access to a professional mental health care. And follow up and follow through with them. Keeping them connected with you and making sure they're staying connected with their support systems is linked with a 20% reduction in suicide rates following a release from the hospital. It does not have to be hard. A text message can help. Through all of this, it is important to be mindful of your own mental health and take care of yourself. On the screen now are some resources available to JEA employees specifically, as well as the community at large. The Employee Assistance Program, which is available to JEA employees and family members, offers free licensed counseling and can refer team members to ongoing care. The Teledoc offers counseling over the phone 7 days a week. 988 is the new shortened suicide and crisis lifeline, which is available 24/7 via phone, text, or online. And NAMI offers local education and peer support groups in Jacksonville and across the nation for individuals struggling with their mental health and their families and support networks. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Good morning, esteemed board and esteemed JEA staff. As you know, I'm Lucy.
Excuse me, Douglas Sumberg, is your mic on?
Oh, you want to hear what I say? It's got a green light.
Okay.
Is that better? Okay. Well, I'm still Lucy Sonnenberg, and this morning I, along with Bud Para, are here to introduce you to an alternative resolution to the resolution on clean energy beyond 2030 that JEA staff has developed and that you'll be discussing and considering next week at your full board meeting. Before the resolution that you see before you was developed by Bud and myself with input from others. But before I get into discussing that resolution, Bud and I both would like to offer a very deep thanks to Laura Shepis and Jay Stowe for a very, very lengthy, wide-ranging, and informative conversation about these resolutions. Both Bud and I feel that this was a rare opportunity that was given to us and may continue to value it greatly. So thank you very much. So about that resolution, what we're asking you to do today is to give it serious study and consideration. It's one that's quite a bit more detailed, we feel, than the JEA staff resolution. And Bud's going to cover some of those and summarize some of those details for you after I get done speaking today. But more generally speaking, I think our resolution asks you to reflect more closely on the JEA of the future that you hope for. It is also one that asks you to consider the relative merits, the value of establishing benchmarks and timelines to charting a desirable future. We feel that these are necessary to have any possibility of maximizing the possibility of achieving any desirable future that you might envision. We think that we also agree and recognize that it is unwise to promise to achieve goals with uncertain potential. But we think your resolution could be anything you want it to be. We think that the purpose of your resolution should be to show what you think, what your preferred long-term future for JEA is. It should show us what you think JEA should be striving for. We think language can be included to make it clear that any specifics in your resolution are subject to reality and are aspirations of the goal. And finally, as you're discussing this, we would like for you to really consider the the message that you will send to other municipal utilities through this resolution. JEA, as the largest state and the 8th largest national municipal utility, some might say have an even greater responsibility than others to lead the way in solving one of the problems of humankind that one of the biggest ones we face. And of course, that's global climate change and carbon emissions. Thank you very much. I'm going to finish one of the last things I was going to say, and that is we think your resolution should reflect that importance. We think your resolution should reflect the very significant role JEA can play in this. So thank you very much for your time, as always, and very much for your warm welcome.
Great, thank you. Hi, Bud, please.
Good morning, I'm Bud Para, and see in front of you the cover sheet is just the highlights of our proposed resolution, but that's the important part. We appreciate this time to talk to you. In JEA's 2023 Integrated Resource Plan, which this board has accepted, it set measurable stretch goals for 2030. 35% clean energy with something like 1,275 megawatts of solar, 100% clean energy to JEA facilities, retire Northside 3, a 40-year-old gas unit, and reduce carbon emissions by 80% from 2005 levels. Those were good, measurable goals. And now JEA staff is developing the plans to get us to meet those goals. And we have great confidence that that'll come to pass. JEA staff has also proposed a resolution on environmental stewardship for beyond 2030. And it's well written, and we have no argument with it, except there are no numbers in it, none. There's no date, there's one date, and that's to do another study by 2026. And we feel like there should be measurable goals beyond 2030 so that staff and so that Jacksonville will know where JEA is attempting to get. So in our proposal, we ask the JEA to have these measurable goals. They're not easy, they're not supposed to be easy, but they are doable. We're asking that JEA commit to retiring its last 2 coal units by 2035. That's 12 years from now, almost enough time to build a nuclear plant. Well, maybe half enough time to build a nuclear plant. Achieve a 5% customer-owned residential and commercial rooftop solar. Try to get 5% of our energy from rooftop solar. To provide a path to create community microgrids with battery storage by 2040. Establish a plan to reach 95% clean energy by 2045, and establish a plan to reach 0 carbon emissions by 2050. That's more than 25 years from now. We have time to do that. We ask this board to consider setting measurable goals and to direct staff to develop plans to get JEA to those goals. We have great confidence that staff can do that, and we have great confidence that this board can set measurable goals. And we'll be back at the full board meeting a week from Tuesday and probably say these same things again. Thank you.
Thanks, Bud.
I'm looking forward to that conversation. I really am. It's something I think, John, you and I asked for it back in April. So I'm glad that we're going to be able to socialize that resolution. I think it's a really important part of our future, and I appreciate your engagement and your support.
I agree, Marty. Very important discussion on that, so thank you. Okay, next we'll talk pricing policy. Victor, how you doing today?
Good, good. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Glad to be here. Again, my name is Victor Blackshear. I am the Director of Financial Planning and Rates, and for now, I'm going to be talking about pricing policy revisions. So when we took a look at our pricing policy this year, we noticed some opportunities to make some revisions in the policy. In particular, we were recommending to remove our legacy charges and update our health insurance reserve section in our pricing policy. So legacy charges. If you recall, back in April 1st of this year, we had a rate hearing and we passed some changes in our rates. And part of those changes was the removal of our residential conservation charge as well as our environmental charge. Our pricing policy still references those legacy charges, so our recommendation is just to remove those charges out of our pricing policy. As far as the health insurance reserve update, well, we spent some time with our employee services group to just make sure that it was in line with current practices. And when we dug into it, we saw some opportunities. One is to reference the Florida statute to provide additional guidance for our reserve requirements. And also, when we took a look at the charter, we realized there was a misalignment there. So we are recommending to designate our CEO, our managing director, or his designee as the author of the funding for the health insurance reserves. And we also looked at the excess funds section, and if you see within there, it references refunding to the employees. Well, after talking to employee services group, the decision was, well, really JEA is the primary contributor of those fundings. So we would like to remove that out. In the event that we have excess fundings, it gives JEA the opportunity to use those excess fundings for other expenses such as stop loss insurance. So with that, those are the two main pricing policy recommendations we would like to make, revisions we would like to make. In addition, there's some more administrative items like aligning our gains with our align our gains realized from our dispatch agreements and removing some of the last legacy cash basis references in the pricing policy. So with that, the staff just recommends for the board to approve the proposed pricing policy revisions.
Okay, any questions at all?
Regina, this sounds like a bunch of cleanup, and it sounds like it's got some unintentional ramifications because we're cleaning up some unintended consequences from our past. Have you dug into these changes, and do they match?
Legal's review and we help line up with the charter language and some of the result of the charter.
Sorry.
Legal's taking a review. Some of the changes were a result of the 2020 changes. So we did do the recommendations for the statutory citations as well as the charter revisions.
Yeah, it's amazing that we're how many years into this and we're still cleaning up language and documents. Right. But I don't see any reason, as long as legal says that this makes sense. I've moved to approve.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion approved. Thank you.
Victor, don't find any more comma placements or something else.
Thank you. Okay, on to the next one. I'm here again to talk about our revenue requirements results, as well as some rate study updates. So when the board approved the FY24 budget of $822 million, we took the budget and applied it to our utility basis rate making methodology to determine our revenue requirements for FY24 when it comes to rates. When we did that, we came to the conclusion that based off utility basis, that there's a target return of $13 million that we're looking to achieve. So we take the FY24 electric revenue requirements, and then we look to adjust our rates to achieve the target revenues to meet those requirements. So let's get into the details. When we compare the FY24 revenue requirements to our projected revenues this summer, we found that there's going to be a $14 million shortfall. So the next step was to break down those revenue requirements by rate classes, which you see before you. And currently, the residential class, as well as the ISXLD, which is the interruptible service extra large demand rate class, they are the only two classes that we're still currently under collecting from. So our recommendation is to target those two rate classes to close that shortfall. As you can see there, the residentials, we're looking to obtain $13 million more from that class. And from the ISXLD class, we're also looking to collect an additional $700,000 thereabout from that class. Concurrently, while we're looking at the rate increases, we're also strongly considering some rate redesigns to our interruptible class as well as our ISXLD class, which we'll discuss further on the next two slides. So the interruptible class. The interruptible rider was initially implemented in 1995. Currently, there's 40 service agreements that's on that particular rider out of the 200 large industrial customers that we have today. And what this rider does, it allows those customers to receive a lesser rate to be on that rider, but in exchange, JEA has the opportunity to interrupt those customers in the event that we need it for the things that's mentioned on the slide, emergency services, to make sure we commit to our firm power commitments, as well as anything that's economically necessary. An interesting fact, though, is we actually have not exercised the interruptions in over 10 years. So, needless to say, and as well as we haven't really looked at, we haven't looked at this rate. We haven't given this rate a hard look since 2010. So it's a long overdue time to take a deep dive into it and see if we can make some some revisions to that tariff. So we got with our rate consultants 1898, and as I stated, we did a deep dive and came away with some great findings. Number one, we've identified that the discounts that's currently in the tariffs is embedded in the pricing, so there's less transparency there. So one of the things we would like to do is to pull the credit out of that rate so it can be more transparent to the customers going forward. Also, we saw in this rate, again, since 1995, that these customers have been receiving these energy rate discounts, and they were getting an additional 2.5% contract discount. It's my understanding back there, the reason why those discounts were established was because there was the fear of deregulations back in those days. So after having this conversation with our rate consultants, we came to the conclusion that there's no cost justification for these discounts moving forward. So we're recommending to phase those out over time. And the last piece that we found in there was peaking pricing, as well as these two different rate options. So peaking pricing is a mechanism for us to collect additional revenues when the marginal pricing exceeds or high levels. But when we had a conversation with our energy operations team, as well as the customer relationship team, we came to the conclusion that these peaking pricing really was a customer dissatisfier, and it wasn't effective in terms of collecting our costs. So the recommendation after having those conversations was, you know what, let's go ahead and eliminate this peaking pricing because we can recover this cost in our regular rates, as well as eliminate these two options, because having these two options in this interruptible rider creates another rate inequity, so it will close those rate inequities. The other rate redesign study that we've undergone, if you recall back in April 1st, we also recommended to put a pause on raising the rates at the time for the IXXLD rate because we were looking to pursue a new rate design for that class. And as a reminder, that rate class is for customers with 50 megawatts or greater of load. So we began to look at that rate, and we came away with a new design, a new time-based rate design, where the extra large customers will have the flexibility to move their consumptions away from high pricing periods to low pricing periods if they choose to accept that the more bill volatility that comes with it. Another interesting fact with this rate, is right now we have one customer that's on it. So we're hoping with this new rate design, after going through the process and seeing how effective it is, we're hoping to see others may move to this rate design as well. And I will get in those particular pieces in a minute. The one thing I do want to highlight with this new rate design is it's a time of use rate. What that does, that allows us as well as the customer to share more of the financial risk that comes there. Because during our on-peak periods, the pricing to generate is higher than our low-peak periods. So this gives the opportunity and the signal to our customers to move some of their high price, or move some of their consumption off of those high price periods to our low price periods, which will also benefit JEA as a whole and our system utilization. So when we explore replacing the IXXLD with, right now we're calling it a GXXLD. We haven't quite landed on the naming convention yet. There's a couple of things that we want to move. One is we want to replace the tiered energy charges based on the ratchet demand with energy and demand charges based on time of use periods, as I described recently. And likewise, just like the interruptible rider, the discount is embedded in the rate. So in this rate design as well, we want to make it more transparent and reveal that credit in the tariff. And similar to the interruptible rider that we discussed as well, we want to eliminate the peaking pricing. And the last piece that we're really vetting right now is replacing the fixed monthly rate, fuel rate, with a variable hourly fuel charge. And the variable hourly fuel charge is very similar to the time of use on the base rate side. What that does, it spreads the fuel pricing volatility between JEA and the customer. So the customer could decide if they want to take on that price volatility and run their generation or run their facilities during those high fuel pricing periods, or shift their productions to the low pricing facilities. So it gives them, again, more flexibility and governing their own bills.
Victor, and we have the capability right now to be able to get that data to the customers?
That's what we're working through.
Okay.
We do have we have the capability on the back end. We're
Right.
trying to find out how to make it more efficient to get to the customer on the front end.
Mm-hmm.
So all the tools we have in place, we just got to put them all together to be an effective billing process.
Right. Okay.
With these, like you said, there are approximately 40 customers on the interruptible service. Have they been part of this discussion?
We have been discussing it with our key accountants, and they have been informing the customers of these upcoming changes or potential upcoming changes because we haven't presented to the board yet.
So they know it's coming, but they haven't been part of the conversation.
I would love to say, and I'm hoping someone from customer relationship was there. I would love to go on the record to say it, but I'm hoping that someone from CR is present. I will follow up and make sure you get that answer.
Thank you.
But I feel pretty confident, but I'll follow up.
All right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to suggest we've got plenty of time based on the path forward that we need to make sure that the users are really aware of what this change means and that they understand it and can benefit from it. But we've got plenty of time to do that.
Yes.
Okay, permission to, I'm sorry. I want to go back to the shortfall on residential. I mean,
Yes, ma'am.
I feel like we are the interruptible peak pricing. That all makes sense. Again, it feels like tweaks, but are we saying the residential rates, that would be an increase to the community? It's $13 million of the $14 million shortfall. Is that going to be the only increase that our residential users will experience in the coming year? I mean, I'm trying to, we just raised the rates, and I just want to really understand the impact on the residential side, if I'm reading it correctly.
Right. So we will continue to come with recommendations for rate increases for the next few years because, Joe, what's the numbers on Vogel?
Approximately 225 million a year.
And I understood that. I knew I was expecting that.
So as we look, can we go back a few slides? Keep going.
It's 17, slide 17.
Okay, thanks.
Keep going. Go back another one.
There we go. Oops.
Go back.
Go forward one.
Smart print test.
Sorry. Okay. So when we after we do our cost of service study, we break down to try to figure out that each category is paying their fair share, and we see the deficit in that bottom line down there under over collection. So residential, we've been under collecting, and in some of the other rate classes, we've been over collecting to make up for that. So I would say that we would come now. We're doing this from kind of a scientific standpoint, and there's a political standpoint as well, and we understand that as well. So that's why we like to have this dialogue.
So this is scientific.
Yes, ma'am.
This is a math equation.
Yes.
But there's ramifications
Yes,
to
ma'am.
the math equation. And I would challenge us to look deeper into, I've mentioned in the past, our cost structure, to see if there's a way that we can do something other than just simply make it easy with the math equation. And X is our residential
Yes, ma'am.
consumer. And X plus Y times 3 gets the math equation, but X is the most vulnerable.
Yes.
So I really would challenge us for $13 million to try to figure out X differently. Does that make sense?
It makes perfect sense. And Victor and Joe and I have those conversations with Sheila and her folks all the time. Are there, can we offer an alternate rate, right? That might, so at the end of the day, we need the $14 million, okay? But how we slice and dice that is, there's lots of different answers.
And I get it. This is so early in the process. I just felt like I should declare myself.
So I appreciate that. And as you can see from Victor's last slide, we have quite a few mileposts still to get through in this process, and we will work towards that as we move through those mileposts.
Everybody's costs are going up. Rick's business costs are going up.
Yep.
I used to pay 1% for deposits. I'm paying 5% in this span of a year. So I get cost increases. This just feels like a tweak, and it just feels like we might be able to solve this one differently. We cannot solve Vogel differently. That's just impossible.
This is understand. Yeah.
But I just want to
Totally
challenge.
agree.
I'm going to
Yes, ma'am.
challenge you all to think about this.
Thank you. We'll work on it. Promise
Thank you.
There's got to be a better way.
And we have plenty of time to socialize.
Yes, ma'am. I think that was our point too, right? With that, we wanted, we didn't want to just come in at the last minute and say, here it is, right? So this is good. This is why we're doing this the way we're doing it, so that we can have the dialogue, we can understand and get in alignment where if we're not in alignment.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Anything else?
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks, Victor.
Thank you, Victor.
Okay, next one will be the establishment of a debt ceiling for JEA. Randall, how you doing, Randall?
Doing great.
Good.
Good morning, Chair and committee members. I'm Randall Barnes, Treasurer here at JEA. We are here for a couple of items that I think you're going to be very excited to see. They're basically about encouraging simplicity and increasing governance and transparency in the debt approval process. So the first item we have up here is the establishment of the debt ceiling for JEA. And just for some background, by charter, JEA has to ask City Council for authorization to issue debt. This hasn't happened in a really long time. For one, JEA has been in the mode of refunding debt for a long time. Rates have been low, and we made a lot of progress in that respect. But the way that would happen in the past is every so often, JEA would go forward and ask for a certain amount of refunding and new money authorization for borrowing from the city. And it wasn't based on any metrics or anything like that. And in order to know how much authorization you had, basically you had to go back in time and add up all the incremental authorizations and then go add up all the incremental issuances that have been done, do some math and figure out how much you had left under. Of course, we obviously kept track of that, but there was no way for anyone to go and just know how much authorization we had available. So fast forward to today, we have some new money issuance that was approved by the board in the FY24 budget, and we on the water and sewer side and on DES. And so we decided to take a look at how this authorization at the city works. We have about $200 million worth of authorization on water and sewer at the city council level right now. So that's not enough for us to do what we need to do in fiscal year 24. So our thought was, well, what if we came up with a not to exceed debt outstanding amount? Basically, that would take into account any debt activity, refundings, retirements, things like that. You would just be able to look at how much debt we had outstanding at any one time and compare it to the debt ceiling and see that we have, ability to issue the debt. And so what you see here on this slide is is a projected debt outstanding forecast for the end of fiscal year 24. It includes the authorized debt from the FY24 budget, and then the proposed debt ceiling, the debt ceiling amounts that we're proposing for each of our systems. For electric, 1.9 billion, water and sewer, 2.5 billion, and then for DES, 150 million. Now, we didn't just pull those numbers out of the air. Our methodology for coming up specifically for the electric and water and sewer system was to look a few years out into the future. I think we looked through fiscal year, or looked 5 years out into the future, and looked at our borrowing plans over that time frame, and then compared it to the amount of assets outstanding. So we're looking at our debt to assets ratio. So that's a ratio that rating agencies look at. Also, it's something that we track as part of our pricing policy. So our goal was to set something that kept us within the 50% debt to asset ratio for each of those two systems. And then DES is a little different. It's a very much smaller system, and it's in a growth mode. So we're proposing 150 million, and then over time we'll continue to evaluate to see what level makes sense as that system matures even more. But we have already discussed this with the council auditors, city council level, and they were very receptive and thought it was a really good idea. And we've also discussed this with, I think, 14 now council members. So everyone has been very receptive to the idea. Thinks it makes a lot of sense. It's very transparent. And we're going to also pair this with the budget approval process. So each year when we come to you with the budget request for the next fiscal year, we're going to have in there this debt ceiling or proposed changes to the debt ceiling based on what happens, in the years. If there needs to be an adjustment, we'll propose it at that time. But as you approve the fiscal year budget, then this will be paired with it, and it'll go forward to the city council, and they'll have transparency. They'll see where we are in terms of debt outstanding. They'll see anything that they need to see, and it'll be in the record for everyone to know that we're within our financial means, basically. So that's this one. We would like to see the board or the committee to approve a recommendation to approve this debt ceiling approach, and the next step after board approval would be for us to take it to the city council and seek approval at the city council level.
And so with this proposal, then the revised debt to asset ratio, that should negatively affect JEA with the rating agencies.
No, it actually, I think, would be viewed favorably, because right now, as far as they know, we could issue as much debt as possible. Now, we obviously had to go get city council approval, but there's not any transparency into that right now. But this will be something they could even we could point to in the official documents, the approvals, the ordinance code, and everything else. So,
and that's how we came up with those numbers on the blue line, right?
Right.
We looked at, okay, financially, how much debt would be the top end we would be comfortable with,
right,
with a rating agency view on that, and so that's what we got those numbers to begin with.
Right, and this is just looking at fiscal year 24, but as you go further out, it takes into account refundings and retirements and new debt issue all throughout. So we think we're very comfortable with.
I love the proactive approach. I think this is really appropriate in the budget cycle. So I'm glad that's what we're going to do in the future. We have been aggressively paying down debt. So I'm not digging deep into the numbers, because I think the rating agencies would love this discipline. They'd love to understand what we're doing. But I'm glad you dug into debt to asset ratio, but that cost of capital is changing. Did you look into coverage ratios?
Yes.
And we're well within the coverage ratios.
Yes.
Because that's where everybody's tripping right now.
Yep. That's we considered several variables in that factor.
And it may be helpful for the full board to illustrate the amount of debt that we've been paying down, just there's some great charts out there.
Yeah,
that-
sure.
Yeah.
That show kind of where we are in our debt cycle. Because I think this is the absolute right approach.
Thank you.
Great, thank you.
We can add that to the package for next.
And the current debt to asset ratio is 44%.
It's a little higher than that now. This is a projection for fiscal year 24, so it's in the 45.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
But the 1.9, so that's assuming assets go up then.
Yeah, there's
this
impact.
This is projecting, yeah.
Yes, sir.
Because obviously, at 3 billion, 1.9 is a lot more than 50% of 3 billion.
Right, and we were financing capital projects, so you will have an increase in assets and as time goes by. So,
Randall,
yes, sir.
Numbers are a big increase. The ceiling is a big increase over the current debt. And I feel like having that much slack in there, number one, we will set bells off with rating agencies with that kind of big message that in the future we're going up to those levels. And it also takes away some of the just oversight. And I would encourage you to tighten up those numbers a little bit, because if you have a debt ceiling that is so high, it's useless, other than scaring the rate agency.
I would just say through the chair to Mr. Baker, there currently is no debt ceiling, and we're setting these at a level that even if we did go to those debt outstanding amounts, we would still be within the 50% debt to asset ratio, which is very well received by the rating agencies. I forget what year it was. At one point, the electric system was at 90%, and we had.
Oh, I was here.
Yeah, about 10 years ago. So
Now it's like
these levels, I think your
I think the
suggestion,
illustration that I'm asking for will help with the historic view of the debt levels.
And just to make it clear too, we will not be issuing any debt until it is approved by this board. So
That's correct.
Anything would have to come through this body to get approved.
And so we can show you where we are on that scale.
That's right. This is not indicating necessarily that we're going to issue that much debt. It's just that gives us the ability without having to go back to the city council every single.
So currently we're at 1.4 billion. And if you were to, you said how much more debt can you issue now today based on the old formula?
So today we don't actually have any authorization available on the electric system side. So we would have to go to city council and say, hey,
You're at the maximum now.
Right.
Okay.
Water and sewer, we have about 200 million left. It's just been so long since we've had to issue new money debt. And so regardless, we were going to have to go to city council.
There's no capacity right now whatsoever. Okay, that's what I understand.
Right.
So to me, this is an important process that we're going to allow the missing step of going to the city council when we have an active debt issuance, that we would do this in advance of going out to the market for a debt issuance, but you would always come to us for approval of that debt issuance.
Right. And that's the next item we're going to talk about, which I think you're going to like.
I think that slide would be really helpful. the one
Yeah, I
that
think
was
so.
described. And go back in time.
Yes, ma'am. It's a ski slope.
And we knew water and sewer investments were going to be needed. We've been talking about that for a while.
In fact, that's when talking to Ted earlier, this accounts for the new Senate bill. I can't remember the right nomenclature, which is pretty significant impact too on that. So, yeah. Okay, so at this time, let me ask for a motion to bring this proposal to the board.
Can I ask a procedural question? Is this is going to be one we pull out and discuss? It's not going to be on the consent agenda? Sometimes we approve things and they just show up on the consent agenda. I think this is one, given the dialogue we just had, that we should probably pull out and discuss.
I agree. I think this is one that we should highlight with the board, full board.
Right.
So in essence, then we don't really need a motion.
Do we? I don't, so I was under the
I'm
impression
sorry,
we needed a motion to
procedurally-
bring it to the board
Is that
You
for
can still-
discussion.
The committee can still make a recommendation for the board's approval.
perfect? I so moved.
Okay.
Second.
Motion passed, thank you. Yeah, definitely full discussion with the board. Okay, thank you.
With my slide.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, please.
Yeah, that slide will make that amount not look so bad.
Yeah.
So the next item that we have for discussion is a delegation of authority to issue bonds. And so if you recall earlier this year in January,
I'm sorry.
Sure.
Marty, you bring a good point, and I talked with Jay on this around 10 days ago, especially for the items discussed here in the F&O committee, when, and I was sort of concerned where it goes to the consent agenda without really the other board members who aren't committee members having full visibility and understanding of it. So I'm all about, when we pass things here, really, it's for full board discussion. It winds up being a no-brainer, fine. But no intent at all on just shortchanging it to a consent agenda where it's not, vetted out and discussed, without a doubt.
Yeah, I've always felt that way, that, the public never saw us having conversations because we have them in the committee meetings. And I think Jay is considering just eliminating committee meetings next year. And we might have longer board meetings, but we would be able to have deep conversations because our board meetings go pretty quickly because we do so much business in the committee. And I think that's something he's considering for next year. For that reason.
Just for clarification, I mean, after our meeting today, if you would like for me to get with General DeSalvo and just to make sure, hey, this one's okay to go on consent agenda item. This is, we've already said we want to talk about, the new bond. We'll pull that out, make sure that gets on the regular agenda. Would that be okay? I just want to make sure that I'm getting the things you want on the regular agenda and what you don't want on the consent agenda,
Yeah, so to your point, like we didn't say the rate study needs to be on the agenda for the board meeting. I think anytime we're touching rates, it probably should be a conversation. We tried committees.
And just for the board's awareness, during a board meeting, if there's a consent item, the board has the discretion to pull the item off the consent, place it on the regular agenda, and then have the full discussion and take action.
Yep.
Well, I've just been jealous of other committees. I'm on two, and there's one that I really want to get to, but I can't do it. So it's like, let's just have all the conversations all at the same time. I want to be on your committee, workforce committee.
Okay.
Okay, good. Okay. So you may recall earlier this year in January, we came and asked for a delegation of authority to the CEO, managing director, CEO for the issuance of refunding bonds. And we had, there were certain amounts for those refunding bonds. It basically was over a 3-year time frame, and that was consistent with how we had done it for years, I think. And refunding bonds are all based on, whether there's savings, in PB savings and all kinds of rules that we have about that have been previously approved by the board about how we can issue refunding bonds and when we can do it. With this new, the fiscal year 24 board approved budget of new money for water and wastewater of $353 million and district energy system of $22 million, we need to get a delegation of authority to issue those bonds. And so this is actually, when we thought about this, we thought, well, we probably should think about a more simplified way and more transparent way of doing this approval as well. And instead of doing so what we're coming forward with today is a request to go back to an annual approval, more systematic approval of both refunding and new money bonds that takes place in coordination with the annual budget process. Because it makes sense. You're looking at the budget. The budget says we need to issue some bonds. Why don't you just go ahead and give us the approval to, delegation of authority to the CEO to issue those bonds when it makes sense? Because there's all kinds of timing, things you need to take into account. We want to make sure we're entering the market in a good time frame. And it's only a 1-year delegation, so we'll do a 1-year delegation every single year in coordination with the budget process, and it will be extremely transparent to everyone what we have the ability to do. So I'm happy to take any questions that you guys might have on that one.
What about the choice of fixed rate versus floating rate? I think that's something this board is tended to have an opinion about and want to be talked to. And a year's a long time, and that can change. What's the right answer can change. What can we do to get the board involved in that and still accomplish what you're wanting?
I think the delegation of authority gives the delegation down to Jay Stowe to approve what types of bonds are issued. And the reason for that is basically for the timing aspect of going to market. I think obviously Jay, and Ted and Joe and myself would brief the board on what our plans are ahead of time. But in terms of actually asking for authorization prior to doing a bond issue, that would make it more challenging because of the timing of board meetings and things like that. Mm-hmm. So Ted, do you have any?
We could definitely share with you the information as we're going through the process. So So right now we're planning to issue that water debt we just showed sometime around the first of the calendar year. So we are still kind of in the process of putting together the team who will be our underwriters and all of that. And as we start structuring what that debt package will look like, not only variable versus fixed, but are we going to sculpt that debt into our current debt? Are we just going to make it fixed across the next 30 years, the next 20 years? All of those things. We will be coming back to the board to share that and get guidance, but at the same time, we need to have the flexibility that, we don't have another board meeting for 6 weeks. We've timed this to go into the market. It looks good. Maybe we speed it up a week, maybe we slow it down a week or two, and we don't want to miss opportunities because of that. So,
but I think Chair Baker makes a great point, though, because it's easy to give you authority when rates are on the way down and we're refunding to benefit. It's a very different conversation in today's rate environment, and I don't know that we've had that dialogue socialized here. I know Chair Stein has some pretty strong opinions that should be addressed. I don't have a problem with the delegation of authority, but I might suggest, I think we're going to do a retreat next year. Maybe we have some experts come talk to us so we can socialize a strategy around what you do in a rising rate environment.
Go ahead, Jeff.
Can I add to address Chair Baker's concern? It's highly unlikely that we would issue straight variable rate debt. We could consider issuing variable rate debt and then swapping that to fixed. Chair Stein has indicated quite a concern about our variable rate debt exposure. Much of that is hedged though, but we look at that and would certainly look to minimize the impact because it entails more risk. You see the short end of the curve and variable rates are very high right now. So,
And
certainly we'll address that.
So I'm so glad we're on the same wavelength. I've been having some conversations, myself and Laura Dutton, there's a new person over at the Federal Reserve, and we're trying to work out a schedule where she could come and speak to the board to talk just about those things about, the economy and where they see their interest rates going in the future and all of that. So,
And one of Joe's buddies on the bond side might be a good additive.
Yes.
I think that is worth having a deeper conversation.
Yep.
If we are having a retreat.
Yep.
Because we haven't given you guidance on a rising rate environment. We haven't even discussed it.
Right.
Okay. Well, I move to approve the delegation of authority as presented.
Yeah, second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, thank you. Okay, next one's the debt management policy action.
Yeah, hi. Good morning, committee. My name's AJ Soto. I work in the Treasury Department for Randall. I'm here to discuss the debt management policy revisions that we have brought for you today. The debt management policy provides broad guidance and enables sound management, control, and oversight of JEA's debt while facilitating ongoing access to the capital markets necessary to fund future capital projects. The last update to this policy was done in 2019. Revisions to the policy were necessary due to recent regulatory and governance changes. Changes made in the revision include the inclusion of the SOFR index as a replacement benchmark for LIBOR, which was discontinued on June 30, 2023. JEA adhered to the industry-wide International Swaps and Derivatives Association fallback protocol on that. We also included updated references to include the new Financial Instruments and Services Directive that's part of JEA's procurement code. We incorporated changes to the debt authorization process to include annual approval of the not to exceed debt outstanding amounts, which Randall just presented here to the committee. Adjustment of the annual annual plan of finance to 3-year period. And we also added some clarifying language that the use of swaps and other hedging instruments used to manage the debt portfolio is optional, not required. Various other minor edits to simplify the language and provide clarity. We did not make changes to the limits or decision rules as part of the revision. There are still the standing parameters that any refundings will be evaluated on an economic savings or structural advantage basis. We still aim for 5%, savings target as a general guideline. No further substantive revisions occurred to the policy.
Okay, any questions at all?
What's our blended spread on top of SOFR right now? Do you have that? Like, what are we paying over SOFR spread?
It's like SOFR plus a spread of 11.4 or something. I can get the exact figure to you.
We'll get that to you. I don't know it off the top of my head.
I'm just curious. For credit grade debt, that number is popping to SOFR. The average is SOFR 225. So again, the cost of capital has gone up.
Yes, significantly.
Okay, could I have a motion to bring this to the board?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor say aye. Aye. Great, thank you. Thank you, AJ.
Thank you, guys.
Okay, before we go to Russell with the quarterly financial review, let me get back to a public comment. We had a gentleman who had a hard time getting to, I believe he's online right now. Mark Zimmerman, go ahead, please.
Hey, yeah, thank you all. I apologize, but 3 items, one about transparency, 2 about renewable energy, and then the final one about the rates. On the transparency, it would be nice to have the meeting information prior to 10 minutes into the meeting. So hopefully we can get that fixed going forward. The second thing on transparency, like other taxes that we have show up on our bill, we again request that the city contribution be shown as a separate item on all invoices, so all stakeholders know what they're paying for that. Second item on the renewable energy, I think it would be beneficial if JEA had a voluntary program where folks could come in and request additional green energy above and beyond what the utility is providing. That would give an idea of what the market is actually willing to bear on that. And then finally on rates, we think the rate allocation is very important. Getting it correct is important. Also, gradualization of putting these rates where they need to be and doing that over time as opposed to doing it in one fell swoop. And that's all I have, so thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mark. Okay, let's go back to, let's see, the quarterly financial review.
Good morning, Chair and fellow other committee members. My name is Russell Caffey. I am the controller here at JEA, and I'm going to give you the Q3 financial quarterly review. At the top of the slide, you'll see that this year's megawatt sales are down 2% from last year and are in line with budget. The chart on the bottom left depicts, this is for electric, I'm sorry. Electric O&M spend. The fourth bar is forecasted current year O&M spend and is projected to be $272 million, which is $23 million less than the annual budget of $295. Our projected spend for O&M is 92% of the annual budget. The chart on the bottom right is electric capital spend, and in June, the year-to-date capital spend was 41% higher than prior year's actuals for the same period, and our forecasted spend is in line with budget.
And Ted, that's why I keep pushing on O&M. I mean, that slide right there is why I'm not going to stop pushing.
Yes,
we
ma'am.
need to understand that.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
This slide is electric revenue. Current year gross revenues are up 7% or $71 million for the year compared to prior year. This is our fuel rate comparison slide. This slide demonstrates the movement in our fuel rate projections. The dark blue is current month projections and the lighter blue is prior month projections. The deviations in August and September aren't large and are not large, but small deviations are to be expected when we're looking at short-term differences like this.
I think the important thing is to see the 79 at the beginning of the year and the 40 at the end of the year.
Yeah. All right, looking at water. Water sales are slightly over last year with a 1% increase, and they are in line with budget. The annual forecast is also in line with budget. Bottom left is O&M spend for water, and it is projected to be $216 million, which is 11 more than the annual budget of 205. And the year-to-date O&M spend is averaging 21% higher than prior year. Bottom right is water's capital spend. The second bar is actuals, and 3/4 of the way through the year, we are 75% of the budget. The fourth bar projects capital spend to be $435 million, which is slightly above the higher end of our corporate goal of $420 million. Water revenue. Water revenue is up 1% over prior year and is in line with budget. Reclaimed is higher. Reclaimed is higher as a result of more neighborhoods coming on into the reclaim program. And these are our financial metrics. They all have a check mark until you get to the weighted average yield of investments. But our investments, we continue to close the gap. And since last quarter, we closed the gap another 38% on our target. As an organization, we've made a conscious effort in rising interest rates to stay short on our investments. And in a rising interest rate market, we're going to lag behind the market. But conversely, in a declining interest rate environment, we will stay ahead. And I'll take any questions.
I think I asked before and I lost the buzz on it. How do we determine the target
It's a 2-year, so the target moves. The target's the 2-year treasury.
Okay.
And then, so that's why I try to, the best way I'm trying to describe it is I always take our movement towards the target because we haven't caught it yet, but at the same time, we're still making progress. So a 38% closing of the target. And I think last quarter, I think was, I could be right, it was like 68% we closed. So we continue to close on it every quarter so far that I've been reporting. I mean, one day I'm going to say we're not going to close.
Last month's yield was about 4.25. So that's just 1 month, but we're making significant progress.
Okay.
They'll catch up by the end of the year. If they put it in a money market account, they got it.
And then what will happen, I mean, it's always a cycle, right? And just trying to figure out how long the cycle is the hard part. But at some point, rates will come back down, right? And we'll look better than we really are because we'll be enjoying, we always lag behind that.
Another thing to consider is that captured within this investment return are also investments held for debt service reserves, which are invested for longer periods of time. So we're holding bonds years ago. So it's going to artificially bring that down.
And, I don't know what this equates to into dollars, but to be so over our target of liquidity in a rising rate environment, maybe you use some of that liquidity to pay down some debt. I don't know. I don't know if that's $1 we're talking about or $100 million. And
So as we look out further, because so we're not going to use it to pay down debt, but we're going to use it to offset future debt in years 2 and 3.
Okay, smart.
Any other questions or comments? Thanks, Russell.
All right, thank you.
Okay, Rita with Supply Diversity Program.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Rita Scott, Manager of Supplier Diversity Programs and Procurement Services. And this morning, I'm going to provide an update on our Supplier Diversity Program. JEA implemented the Supplier Diversity Program to promote inclusion of all vendors with a diverse certification. We rolled out the program on August 8th of last year. The Supplier Diversity Program works hand in hand with the JSUB program. The difference is diverse suppliers can be of any size, located anywhere, and are required to be certified by a third party. Third parties can include, but certainly not limited to, vendors certified through the City of Jacksonville, JTA, Duval County Public Schools, Women's Business Enterprise National Council, the Veterans Organization, National Minority Supplier Diversity Council, and this is just to name a few. If a business is certified as a JSUB or a disadvantaged business enterprise, they can register to be a part of the system. If a business is certified as a veteran-owned business, they too can be a part of the program. The Supplier Diversity Program is designed to build relationships and increase opportunities with diverse suppliers. So the program is based on 4 focus areas. The first one is advocate. We want to advocate on behalf of all of our diverse suppliers and encourage our customers to utilize our Supplier Diversity Directory for procurement opportunities. The second area of focus is network. We want to build an inclusive network of suppliers. We will encourage diverse suppliers of any size, located anywhere, that are certified by a third party to register their company in our Supplier Diversity Directory. Being a part of the directory will give them exposure that can lead to potential opportunities. The third area of focus is educate. We want to educate our diverse supplier network by offering a variety of events to enhance and help grow their business. And then the last area of focus is report. We want to ensure our progress is measured. Now, over the last year, we have been striving to grow the Supplier Diversity Program through community outreach and implementing a tracking repository so we can develop a database of available diverse suppliers for our prime vendors to use, but also the ability to track spend at a deeper level to include Tier 2 and Tier 3 subcontracting spend. So when we say Tier 2, this is a subcontractor who contracts with the prime contractor to provide some sort of good or service. When we say Tier 3, that is a subcontractor that contracts with a Tier 2 subcontractor to provide a good or service. Our goal is to start capturing all that diverse spend. The Supplier Diversity Directory is located on our website and utilizes the B2G Now system to capture the information. To register, the company will provide basic information about their business and their diverse certification information. Diverse suppliers of any size and location, as mentioned before, can be certified by a third party, that are certified by a third party are encouraged to register. In addition to creating a directory, the B2G Now system also allows us to track subcontracting spend to capture a larger group of diverse suppliers working with JEA. This will in turn continue to grow the number of diverse suppliers in the directory. As a result, we are making changes to our contracting requirements to report Tier 2 and Tier 3 diverse subcontracting supplier spend. The image on the right is what the landing page looks like for B2G Now, which can be found at jea.gov2g.com. Currently, we track the diverse spend of suppliers that provide us with their diverse status when we initially onboard them to the Oracle system. For any supplier that self-identifies as being diverse, their spend is captured in this report. As of July, we have an overall spend of $30 million for prime suppliers. There are a total of 74 diverse prime suppliers we are currently working with, and the chart shows the diverse mix of those suppliers that make up that spend. On a quarterly basis, we track the number of outreach events and initiatives we participate in. This year, we have attended 22 events and recruited a total of 18 suppliers to register in the Supplier Diversity Directory. As the new contracting requirements go into effect, we will be able to track additional spend and the number of diverse subcontractors we are currently working with that's not being captured to date. The results of this effort will support the metrics going forward to determine a target percentage of growth from year to year. And I'm happy to take any questions.
What advantage does a diverse supplier get?
So by being a part of the Supplier Diversity Directory, it's going to give them exposure to our buyers, our prime contractors. It is an outward-facing directory, so the public can also access it and use it as a resource.
But we don't have any targets that say. That's what I was going to ask. Or give, so we need to be careful not to confuse the diversity program with the JSEP program. So they're two different things. Okay, so we're just talking about the diversity. If I get it wrong, you tell me.
Okay.
We do not give any kind of preferential treatment to a diverse vendor, but we do those four things that Rita explained to the first. We try to get to know them, we try to get to educate them, we try to show them what is possible for them. But once we start the procurement process, we do not differentiate. Right. But when a couple of years ago, we didn't have any way to even track what we had, right? And so that's what we've been doing. So if at some point in time we want to set some goals and some things and change our procurement, we'll work with legal to do what we can do legally, right? And we can take some guidance from y'all, what you would like to do, but we can't do. It didn't make sense to start there. We needed to start, hey, where we're trying to figure out where we want to go on the map. We got to find that little red dot. You're here now, right? And we didn't even know that a year ago. So now we know where we are with our prime suppliers. hopefully very soon, we'll start getting information on those tier 2 and tier 3 suppliers. And you know, some of this has been hard work because we're having to go back to our current vendors where we weren't capturing this information before and get that information from them. And then now with new vendors, it's a lot easier because we can say, hey, you want to be a new vendor? Here's the package, fill out the paperwork, right? But it's a little bit harder to get our older people that are already in the system, and maybe we haven't dealt with them for a year or so, and you know, but we're getting there.
So said differently, there's no bonus points in our procurement process if people have a diverse team.
No, ma'am.
And is the state of Florida's certification included in which one?
Yes, so any third party that provides diverse certification.
And so I can imagine how difficult it's going to be to get the second and third tier.
Well, so we're going to put wording in our contracts that you need to provide this information to us. So that's it. We're going to help them.
No, and I'm sorry.
No, but this is totally different than the JSEP.
Yes, sir.
Right.
Yes, sir. This is
Right.
so the JSEP. There is special procurement rules around them, and we carve out certain things that we want to make sure we get a certain amount of participation from the JSEPs, and we have a city ordinance that it is how we shape around that, right? We don't have legal structure behind this. We'll have to make that governance ourselves.
Yeah, I think that the data will drive the conversation over time, but I mean, this is a great data point to start. Congrats, you are basically at your goal for the JSEP program. I think it's page 118 in our slides.
Yes, yes.
And, you know, that's amazing. And I'm not sure we've really pushed that number up. So maybe in the future we can push a little harder and have even more of that. I think
Right.
Versus, I think is our percent now?
Yeah, the goal was 22.2 million, and we're actually going to exceed it this year.
Good. We'll keep pushing that number up.
Yeah, and we've grown it year over year. And I think that's been a big success for the program.
That's real impact. That to me is really impactful. But the data is going to help us drive that.
The JSEP program is an excellent program because it helps small businesses. Right. It just doesn't help the fact that, I mean, you know, yes, Morales Construction, we're Cuban, we're minority owned and so forth. It would belong in the JSEP program.
Right.
And so we would qualify if we did work with the JEA under this and so forth. But the JSEP program really helps those small and emerging businesses, which is what it was designed to do, which I think is an excellent program.
And just to brag on staff a little bit, I mean, we had scheduled, you saw the video, but actually that was scheduled for the day when the hurricane was supposed to hit, okay? And the library called us up and said, hey, maybe today's not a good day. So they quickly scrambled and changed the date on that, moved it back a week. But we still had great participation, and I'm not aware of any other agency, including the city, that does that kind of thing, right? Where we invite our JSEP vendors in to understand what we're doing, but there were a lot of tables at that weren't JEA tables. Jacobson, you know, all some of these really big vendors that we work with, right? But hey, there's opportunities. There's for you to do work for them, right? And really that's the whole idea, is to promote that small business. Even if they're not JEA dollars, if we can get them connected with another company that can continue to help them grow is a positive thing.
And Rita does a fantastic job of making those connections for JSEBs in our procurement, for our construction projects, for our engineering projects, and all the rest of it. And we appreciate that. Are you doing something new in the future, Rita?
Yes, I
stole Rita.
I'm actually moving.
Accounts payable.
Yes.
What? You let that happen?
So she's going from one area of my house to another room in my house. So I was happy just to make sure she stayed in my group. So I've got Alan's mad and Joe's happy. So
Well, congratulations.
Thank
People
you.
are fighting over you, which is
Thank
always
you.
a good thing for
So
your
who
career.
is your backfill then?
So the job was just posted, so we will be working on that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So actually, she's doing 2 jobs right
Yes.
now. So.
All right, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Okay, performance scorecard with Winston, please.
Hi, I'm Stephanie Monroe. I'm the Director of Enterprise Analytics at JEA, and I will be presenting our proposal for the Corporate Performance Scorecard for FY24. Our corporate scorecard, as you know, is a summary representation of how JEA is performing across all areas of our business. So for FY24, we are updating the corporate scorecard to align with our strategic focus areas. Develop an unbeatable team, deliver business excellence, earn customer loyalty to become the best utility in the nation. We have selected metrics across each of these areas as a representation of our corporate performance. While the corporate scorecard you see here for FY24 contains 10 metrics as opposed to the 50 metrics we tracked for corporate performance in FY23, we will be expanding our metric tracking through the development of business level scorecards, in which we will be working with each business group to determine the metrics and goals that best represent their individual areas. This will allow us to give more explanatory depth to our corporate performance goals, as well as to connect individuals and teams more closely to the metrics that relate to their individual performance. Additionally, we are working to develop and display consistent and verifiable benchmarking for each metric to understand JEA's performance relative to other similar utilities. So to get into our metrics, to represent the area of developing an unbeatable team, we have included our safety lost time incident rate, LTIR, and our employee engagement score as measured by the Glint survey. While specific DEI metrics were on our FY23 corporate scorecard, we have expanded and moved those to the business level scorecard. There is, however, a DEI component composed within the Glint survey that will continue to be represented at corporate scorecard level. To represent the area of earning customer loyalty, we will continue to use our J.D. Power customer satisfaction survey results to measure our performance with customers. However, in FY24, we will be setting our goal to achieve an absolute score in addition to including our relative performance in terms of quartile ranking. The biggest change to our scorecard metrics is in the area of deliver business excellence. We have selected one reliability metric for each area of operation. So SAIDI to represent electric reliability, grid water pressure to represent water reliability, and SSOs to represent wastewater reliability. Our financial metrics are also included under Deliver Business Excellence with some changes. For FY24, we will be tracking total spend. So that's an aggregate of O&M, capital, and fuel and purchase power expense, while looking at the variance to budget. We are targeting a 5% deviation from budget as the goal for this metric. In addition, we will be tracking total customer bill amounts averaged over 12 months with the dollar goal associated with being in the first quartile for this metric. We have transitioned the total spend and total customer bill to better represent a one JEA at the corporate level. However, we will be tracking individual O&M spend, capital spend, and fuel and purchase power spend at the business unit levels to analyze individual movement throughout the year. You'll also see a new addition to our scorecard for FY24 is the metric for clean energy composition. Our goal associated with IRP is to achieve a 10% clean energy mix by the end of FY24. Once live, this corporate scorecard will be published to a web location where these links to the business level scorecards, as well as the notes for each metric, will be active and allow for interactive engagement with this data for our internal members throughout the year. And I'm happy to take any questions.
I like this a lot better than the old one.
Yeah.
This is.
Is the total customer bill, are we in the first quartile of being the highest or being the lowest?
That's a great question. So the way we have the quartiles defined here, first quartile does represent top 25%. Fourth quartile would represent the bottom 25%.
To answer your question,
It's the lowest.
Okay.
It's the lowest. Lowest.
Yeah.
Sorry.
If it was the highest, it would be red.
I'm just surprised the renewable energy one, 7% of 10% in green. I wouldn't consider that. You know, I guess we're going in the right direction. We're definitely not. You would think green would mean we're there or we're maintaining it. So I'm just kind of curious.
Right, well, there was not a stated goal for FY23 for this, so
Gotcha.
this is a brand new metric
Yeah.
that we have, and the 10% represents what we think we're going to be at the end of FY24. And if we look back where we were like at the beginning of FY23, I think it was like around 2 or 3.
Obviously, we've got Vogel 2 coming on.
Exactly, so
And
this takes into account Unit 3, Unit 4 for FY24, and any additional solar.
All right.
And might be a place where we can push in the future.
That's right.
Yes, I think you're going to see this happen for the future years, probably an even steeper incline.
Yeah, I think 25 will be higher than 24.
I would just say not having a green color there, maybe, just it kind of looks like
We're celebrating.
yeah.
In the end zone before.
We shouldn't be celebrating yet at 7.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's actually a great point, Rick. Maybe that's.
Well, yeah, this is a new goal.
Right,
Yeah,
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 exactly.
But maybe I don't know again, we haven't discussed it, so I don't know that we should put green, so maybe we do NA right now, because we haven't really discussed it. I don't know. To your point, I don't feel like 7% is
Yeah.
right.
I don't think green means,
Woohoo.
yeah, we're meeting our target. I would assume.
Yeah. Well, that's correct.
Okay.
This could have been a clearer circle.
Yeah, that's all. That's all I'm saying. It's not-
We will, however, celebrate like ticker tape parade when we get to green in customer sat on residential. We've been talking about that and talking about that and talking about it. So you heard it here first, ticker tape parade downtown.
All right.
You got
any
a
other
great
comments?
balcony to watch from up
Right.
there.
Great. Thank you, Stephanie. Okay, I think any other business or any other items to discuss at all? Nothing heard. Okay, is this our last F&O for the fiscal year?
Yes, it is.
Dang, been a fast fiscal year, hasn't it? Okay, good. Well, thank you
It's
for
gonna be
attending.
Christmas. We're at Christmas. That's where we are.
Thank you, and good job by the staff on this. I adjourn this meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. Great meeting.
Fabulous.
On.
Sir.
Yeah, that's part of that.
Previous one where it was talking about